Jeane Dixon, one of America's most famous psychics, gained recognition for her bold predictions, including the assassination of President John F. Kennedy and other key moments in history. Born in 1904, Dixon combined astrology, intuition, and spiritual guidance to deliver strikingly accurate forecasts. She became a household name, influencing discussions on global events and psychic phenomena. For 2025, Dixon predicted major changes in global leadership, driven by public dissatisfaction, economic challenges, and the rise of unexpected leaders. She described this year as a turning point that would redefine the political landscape. Leadership is the soul of a nation. When it changes, the destiny of the people shifts as well. Her vision for 2025 calls us to reflect, adapt, and act, as these changes could shape the world for generations to come. Born in 1904, Jeane Dixon discovered her psychic abilities at an early age. Over the decades, she became one of the most famous and controversial psychics in modern history, known for her startlingly accurate predictions about politics and global events. Jeane's abilities began to manifest in her youth, where she often sensed future events with uncanny accuracy. Combining natural intuition with her deep study of astrology, she began crafting predictions that would later astonish the world. Jeane Dixon rose to fame during the mid-20th century as her predictions began to align with real-world events. Her work blended astrology, spiritual insight, and an innate sense of intuition, allowing her to foresee events with remarkable clarity. In the 1950s, Jeane famously predicted the untimely death of a young U.S. president, which was tragically fulfilled with the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963. Jeane foresaw key events during World War II and the Cold War, including shifts in alliances, pivotal battles, and the eventual conclusion of these conflicts. Her growing influence sparked debates about whether psychics should play a role in advising political leaders. Some welcomed her insights, while others questioned their validity. The world is guided by unseen forces. My purpose is to bring those forces into focus, to help humanity navigate through its most difficult moments. Jeane's work left an indelible mark on how the public perceives psychics and their influence on global events. Despite skepticism, her uncanny accuracy earned her a place in history as one of the most iconic psychics of all time. From her early discovery of psychic abilities to her role in predicting some of history's most significant moments, Jeane Dixon's story is one of intuition, insight, and enduring mystery. Uplifting music plays as her most notable predictions and achievements appear on screen, fading into an image of Jeane smiling confidently. In her predictions for 2025, Jeane Dixon described a year of upheaval and transformation in global leadership. This pivotal period, she believed, would be driven by political instability, public dissatisfaction, and the rise of unexpected leaders. Jeane Dixon predicted that a powerful Western leader would resign under unexpected circumstances, creating a vacuum in leadership. This event would trigger political instability as governments struggle to maintain control and navigate the fallout. The resignation could stem from health issues, scandals, or overwhelming public pressure. Dixon foresaw this event as a catalyst for significant political realignments in the West. Dixon predicted that 2025 would see the growing influence of Asian nations on the global stage. New leaders from these countries would call for sweeping reforms, challenging the dominance of traditional superpowers and advocating for a more balanced world order. Asian leaders will push for cooperation in tackling global challenges like climate change, trade inequality, and technological ethics. Dixon saw this shift as a turning point, moving toward a multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed. Jeane Dixon believed that 2025 would mark the emergence of a new generation of leaders, inspired by grassroots movements. These younger leaders would bring fresh perspectives, prioritizing climate action, equality, and ethical technology. Youth-driven activism will propel individuals into leadership roles, challenging outdated systems and practices. This generational shift will redefine political priorities, focusing on long-term solutions and collaboration. Jeane Dixon's vision for 2025 highlights a world in transition. While her predictions point to challenges, they also reveal opportunities for renewal. The rise of unexpected leaders, shifts in power dynamics, and youth-driven change could redefine the future for generations to come. The future is shaped by the decisions we make today. As we move into 2025, Dixon's predictions serve as a reminder to embrace change, act with purpose, and build a better world together. In her predictions for 2025, Jeane Dixon warned of widespread political instability. She believed this turbulence would be fueled by economic challenges, climate crises, and growing demands for accountability from the public. These factors, she said, would place immense pressure on current leaders and pave the way for transformative change. Dixon foresaw economic instability as one of the primary drivers of political unrest in 2025. She predicted a period of global financial strain, marked by inflation, rising unemployment, and widening economic inequality. These conditions would create widespread dissatisfaction, particularly in nations already struggling to recover from previous crises. Economic inequality will deepen, sparking protests and demands for systemic change. Smaller economies may face collapse, leading to migration and heightened geopolitical tensions. Dixon also identified the climate crisis as a major contributor to political instability in 2025. She predicted that extreme weather events, resource shortages, and displacement caused by rising sea levels would intensify public dissatisfaction with government inaction. Governments failing to address climate challenges will face mounting criticism from both domestic and international communities. Climate-related disasters will exacerbate economic struggles, particularly in vulnerable regions, increasing pressure on political systems. Jeane Dixon believed that 2025 would be a turning point for public accountability. Citizens around the globe, empowered by technology and grassroots movements, would demand transparency, justice, and ethical leadership. Protests will become larger and more coordinated, fueled by social media and widespread discontent. Corruption scandals and political inaction will spark calls for resignations and leadership changes. Grassroots organizations will gain influence, reshaping political landscapes from the bottom up, while Jeane Dixon's warnings for 2025 highlight significant challenges. She also saw this period as an opportunity for transformation. Political instability, she believed, would open the door for new ideas, fresh leadership, and the chance to build a more equitable and sustainable world. In the chaos of change lies the seed of renewal. Leadership must adapt, or it will be replaced by those who understand the needs of the people and the planet. Jeane Dixon's predictions for 2025 highlight economic instability as a key driver of political unrest. She foresaw a global economic downturn that would destabilize governments, forcing leadership changes in both developed and developing nations. The economic decline, Dixon believed, would stem from a combination of inflation, rising unemployment, and mounting public debt. These factors would strain governments, leading to widespread dissatisfaction and demands for new leadership. Citizens, burdened by the rising cost of living, will take to the streets to demand accountability and reform. Protests, fueled by frustration over perceived government inaction, will intensify across both wealthy and struggling nations. Dixon warned that economic hardship would amplify public resentment, creating a tipping point where governments could no longer maintain control. Political leaders, unable to address the crisis, will face pressure to step down or risk being ousted. Economic instability will expose weaknesses in governance, accelerating calls for systemic change. Jeane Dixon's predictions remind us that economic instability is more than just numbers. It affects every aspect of society. In 2025, these challenges could reshape political landscapes, pushing leaders to adapt or step aside. Inspirational music plays as visuals of bustling Asian cities, innovative technologies, and prominent Asian leaders at global summits flash on the screen. In her predictions for 2025, Jeane Dixon foresaw a significant rise in the influence of Asian nations. She envisioned a new generation of leaders from Asia stepping onto the global stage, advocating for reform and challenging the dominance of traditional superpowers. Dixon believed that these leaders would be instrumental in pushing for a multipolar world order, where power is distributed more evenly among nations. Their rise would mark a turning point in global politics, reshaping alliances and international strategies. These leaders will advocate for changes in areas such as trade, climate action, and technology ethics. Dixon predicted that their proposals would challenge the status quo, forcing traditional superpowers to reevaluate their approaches to global issues. Asian nations will leverage their growing economic and technological influence to assert themselves as key players on the global stage. Dixon foresaw these leaders not as aggressors, but as visionaries offering alternatives to the dominance of Western powers. Jeane Dixon's vision for 2025 highlights the growing role of Asian leaders in shaping a new global order. Their influence will not only challenge traditional powers, but also offer a path toward greater collaboration and equity. What do you think about the rise of Asian leaders in global politics? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more insights into the future. Upbeat music plays as visuals of young activists leading protests, speaking at summits, and engaging with communities appear on screen. In her predictions for 2025, Jeane Dixon envisioned a generational shift in leadership, driven by youth-led movements. She foresaw the emergence of young, progressive leaders inspired by grassroots activism, reshaping global priorities and bringing fresh perspectives to governance. Dixon predicted that 2025 would mark a turning point, with youth movements propelling a new generation of leaders into positions of power. These individuals, shaped by the challenges of their time, would prioritize innovation, inclusivity, and long-term solutions. Grassroots activism will serve as a platform for young voices to rise. Discontent with outdated policies and stagnant leadership will push for fresh, progressive ideas. Dixon emphasized that this generational shift would redefine global priorities. Young leaders will focus on issues critical to the future of humanity, including climate action, equality, and ethical technology. Policies addressing renewable energy, reforestation, and sustainable urban planning, advocating for marginalized groups and ensuring equitable access to resources and opportunities. Balancing technological advancements with ethical considerations, such as privacy, AI regulation, and fairness. The leaders of tomorrow will not just inherit the world, they will transform it. Their vision will focus not on power, but on progress and purpose. Dixon's vision for 2025 highlights the transformative power of youth. As this new generation takes the reins, they bring with them hope, innovation, and a commitment to creating a better future for all. Jeane Dixon, the renowned psychic, warned of widespread political instability in 2025. She predicted that economic challenges, climate crises, and public demands for accountability would place immense pressure on current leaders, paving the way for transformative change. Dixon identified three major factors driving this instability: economic hardship, the accelerating impacts of climate change, and growing public frustration with ineffective governance. Rising inflation and unemployment will spark discontent, particularly in vulnerable nations. Governments will struggle to balance recovery efforts with addressing immediate crises. Extreme weather events will displace populations, strain resources, and exacerbate existing tensions. Governments unable to provide effective solutions will face backlash from citizens. Citizens, empowered by technology and social media, will demand transparency, fairness, and decisive action from their leaders. Corruption and inaction will lead to large-scale protests and calls for leadership changes. Dixon foresaw this combination of crises as a turning point for global leadership. Current leaders, overwhelmed by the mounting challenges, will face unprecedented pressure to step down or radically change their approaches. Several high-profile resignations in both developed and developing nations. A wave of political reform as citizens demand new leaders and policies that reflect their priorities. While Jeane Dixon's warnings highlight significant challenges, they also point to opportunities for renewal. The instability of 2025 could mark the beginning of a new era, one defined by accountability, innovation, and shared purpose. Visuals of stock markets crashing, closed businesses, and protests against government policies. Somber music underscores the narrative. In her predictions for 2025, Jeane Dixon warned that a global economic recession would destabilize governments worldwide. Both developed and developing nations facing financial crises would see leadership changes as public pressure mounts. Dixon foresaw a period of economic downturn marked by soaring inflation, mass unemployment, and growing inequality. These financial challenges would severely impact both wealthy and struggling nations, creating widespread unrest. The recession, Dixon predicted, would expose weaknesses in governance. Citizens frustrated by ineffective leadership would demand accountability and change. Governments unable to address the crisis would face resignations, upheaval, and reform. Political leaders in wealthy countries would face intense scrutiny as economic hardships challenge their credibility. Public protests and political polarization would destabilize even the strongest democracies. Financial instability would exacerbate existing inequalities, leading to widespread discontent. Governments in these nations would be particularly vulnerable to collapse, as they lack the resources to address the crisis effectively. Jeane Dixon predicted that 2025 would witness massive protests across Europe and North America. Frustrated citizens demanding new leadership and policy reforms would take to the streets in unprecedented numbers. Dixon believed the protests would stem from a combination of economic struggles, climate inaction, and widespread dissatisfaction with government transparency and accountability. Rising unemployment and inflation would leave citizens feeling abandoned by their governments. Widening inequality would spark resentment, particularly in urban centers. Governments failing to act on climate change would face criticism, particularly from younger generations. Citizens would grow tired of corruption and outdated policies, pushing for systemic change. Dixon foresaw these protests as some of the largest in modern history, with millions of people uniting across political and social divides. These movements would call for immediate changes in leadership and policy, unity across borders. Citizens in multiple nations would share common goals, creating a global wave of demand for change. Youth-led movements, younger generations, driven by climate and equality concerns, would be at the forefront of these demonstrations. When the people speak as one, even the most powerful leaders must listen. These protests will mark the beginning of a new era. Dixon's vision for 2025 highlights the power of collective action. These protests, though challenging for governments, will be a catalyst for progress, paving the way for new leadership and bold reforms. Jeane Dixon predicted that 2025 would be a year of shifting power dynamics among nations. Traditional alliances would face unprecedented challenges, while new coalitions would emerge to address shared global threats. Long-standing alliances will be tested by economic instability, climate crises, and differing priorities among nations. Trust between traditional partners may weaken as global challenges strain their ability to cooperate. Economic tensions. Economic downturns will highlight disparities among allies, creating friction. Climate crisis responses. Diverging views on climate action could lead to discord within established alliances. While some alliances falter, new coalitions will emerge, bringing together nations with shared interests in addressing global challenges. These partnerships will reflect a shift toward multipolarity in global governance. Focus on shared goals. Nations will unite to combat climate change, ensure equitable trade, and regulate technological advancements. Leadership from emerging powers, countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America will play pivotal roles in shaping these new alliances. Dixon's vision for 2025 emphasizes the importance of adaptability in global politics. As old alliances fade and new ones rise, the balance of power will shift, redefining the way nations work together to address shared challenges. Despite her warnings about the challenges of 2025, Jeane Dixon's vision carries a profound message of hope. She believed that from these trials, a new generation of leaders would emerge, guided by compassion, innovation, and a commitment to the greater good. Dixon foresaw leaders who prioritize unity over division, progress over stagnation, and sustainability over short-term gains. These individuals would rise not through power or privilege, but through their dedication to addressing humanity's most pressing issues. Empathy will guide their decisions, ensuring inclusivity and equity. They will embrace new technologies and ideas to tackle global challenges. Their actions will focus on long-term benefits for society and the planet. Dixon's message reminds us that every challenge brings the chance for renewal. As we face the uncertainties of 2025, her vision calls us to embrace hope, support new ideas, and work together toward a brighter future. Jeane Dixon envisioned a future shaped by leaders who prioritize the needs of the underserved. These individuals, she believed, would unite people through shared purpose, creating a more inclusive and equitable world. Dixon described these leaders as empathetic and action-driven, focusing on solutions that uplift marginalized groups. Their goal is not just to lead, but to inspire collective efforts that address systemic inequality, understanding the struggles of the underprivileged and making their needs a priority, fostering unity across diverse groups to work toward common goals, creating sustainable policies that ensure lasting change for future generations. Dixon's vision calls for leadership rooted in compassion and purpose. By prioritizing those in need and uniting humanity through shared values, these leaders will shape a future of hope. Jeane Dixon predicted that the future would be shaped by climate-conscious leaders. These individuals will champion policies designed to ensure long-term environmental and economic stability. Dixon described these leaders as forward-thinking and solution-driven, focusing on balancing economic development with the urgent need to address environmental challenges, prioritizing investments in solar, wind, and other sustainable energy sources to reduce reliance on promoting reforestation, carbon neutrality, and eco-friendly urban planning. Working with international partners to tackle Climate issues on a global scale. These climate-conscious leaders, Dixon believed, will lead the way to a future where environmental health and economic prosperity go hand in hand. Their actions will inspire a global shift towards sustainability. Jeane Dixon envisioned a new generation of leaders who prioritize transparency, fairness, and accountability in governance. These leaders, she believed, would restore trust by ensuring that their actions align with the values of the people they serve. Dixon described these future leaders as champions of good governance. They will focus on building systems that are fair, equitable, and rooted in public trust. Leaders will openly share decisions, policies, and their impacts to ensure clarity and public understanding. They will prioritize equitable policies that address social and economic disparities. Leaders will take responsibility for their actions, implementing measures to prevent corruption and inefficiency. According to Dixon, these future leaders will redefine governance by emphasizing accountability and fairness. Their focus on integrity will pave the way for a more just and inclusive world. Jeane Dixon envisioned a new generation of leaders who would prioritize transparency, fairness, and accountability in governance. These leaders, she believed, would focus on restoring trust and integrity in political systems worldwide. Dixon emphasized that future leaders would embrace transparency as a cornerstone of governance. By openly sharing decisions, budgets, and policy outcomes, they would bridge the gap between governments and the people, publishing clear and accessible reports on government spending and progress, using digital platforms to engage citizens and provide real-time updates. Dixon believed fairness would be a defining trait of future leaders. They would focus on equitable policies that address systemic inequalities and uplift marginalized communities, prioritizing equal access to resources like education, healthcare, and employment, ensuring that decisions are made with the well-being of all citizens in mind, not just the privileged few. According to Dixon, accountability will be a hallmark of future leadership. These leaders will accept responsibility for their actions, implement corrective measures when needed, and ensure mechanisms are in place to prevent corruption, establishing independent oversight bodies to monitor government performance, encouraging public feedback, and addressing grievances promptly. Jeane Dixon's vision for future leadership highlights the importance of transparency, fairness, and accountability. These principles, she believed, would restore trust in governance and pave the way for a more equitable and just society. Do you think transparency and accountability are essential for better leadership? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more insights into transformative governance.